The city of New Avalon never slept. Its towers touched the sky, glowing with neon lights that drowned the stars above. In the highest of those towers, inside a room of glass and steel, sat Marcus Halden, the man people called the king without a crown. He was the wealthiest CEO in the city, a man whose voice could change the fate of nations. But tonight, Marcus was not thinking about his empire. He was thinking about his family. His only son, Adrian Halden, stood quietly at the far end of the room. He was tall, calm, and unlike his father, he carried no arrogance on his face. His dark eyes were fixed on the city lights below, but inside his chest, his heart burned with something he dared not show. Marcus leaned back in his leather chair, his fingers tapping on the polished desk. "Adrian," he said in a cold, commanding tone, "your mother is gone. Our family must not appear weak. A house like ours must remain strong. And for that, I have decided." He paused, his gaze sharp as a knife. "You will choose me a new wife." Adrian turned his head slowly. For a moment, he thought he had misheard. "A wife? For you?" he asked. "Yes," Marcus replied. "Your stepmother. A woman of power. Someone from the richest families. She will strengthen our alliances, bring new influence, and keep our empire untouchable." Adrian frowned. His father always spoke like this, like love was nothing but a business deal. Marcus rose from his chair and walked closer, his heavy steps echoing in the silent room. He stopped only a few feet away, towering over his son. "You are my blood. You will choose wisely. Tomorrow, I am holding a banquet. The most powerful women of New Avalon will be there. You will speak to them, study them, and by the end of the night, you will tell me who shall be my wife." Adrian clenched his fists, but he kept his face calm. "Father," he said slowly, "you want me to pick you a stepmother, like a trophy." Marcus smirked. "Not a trophy, Adrian. A weapon. A shield. A name so strong that no one dares to stand against us. Wealth marries wealth, that is the law of survival. Do you understand?" Adrian did not answer. Marcus leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried more threat than kindness. "If you fail me, son, you will regret it. This empire, this fortune, it could be yours one day. But only if you prove that you are ready to play by my rules." Silence filled the room. The hum of the city below was the only sound between father and son. Finally, Adrian spoke, his tone soft but steady. "I understand, father." But inside his heart, a storm was already rising. That night, Adrian could not sleep. He walked through the empty hallways of the Halden estate, past marble pillars and golden statues that meant nothing to him. Every corner of the house whispered of his mother, the only woman who had ever stood against Marcus's cruelty. She was gone now, and Adrian was alone in a fortress built on power and fear. His father wanted him to pick a stepmother. A woman from the rich. A woman who would join the empire like another business partner. But Adrian's mind was already wandering elsewhere. He did not want to live by Marcus's rules. He did not want a life where even family was sold for profit. He wanted something different. Something his father would never understand. As the night grew darker, Adrian stood by the window, staring at the glowing city. He thought of the people below, millions who lived in shadows, working endlessly for corporations like his father's. Among them, there were faces no one cared about, lives crushed by greed. And then, his thoughts rested on her. A face he had seen once before. Not a woman of wealth. Not a woman of power. A face that carried scars, and secrets. Adrian whispered to himself, if I must choose, I will not choose for him. I will choose for me. The next morning, the Haldon Tower was alive with preparations. Servants rushed through the halls, arranging flowers, polishing silver, and setting the grand banquet table. Security drones floated silently in the air, scanning every corner for threats. Marcus stood at the center of the ballroom, giving orders like a general before war. His sharp eyes inspected every detail, for tonight was not just a banquet, it was a battlefield of wealth and influence. He turned to Adrian, who had just entered the hall in a dark suit. Remember, son, Marcus said, his voice hard. Do not embarrass me. By midnight, you will make the choice. The future of this empire depends on it. Adrian nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. But in his chest, his heart whispered something else, the choice I make will not be what you expect. And so the game began. The Haldon Tower had never shined brighter. The ballroom stretched wide like a palace, its crystal chandeliers glowing like captured stars. Gold-trimmed tables filled the hall, and a long red carpet led from the doors straight to the stage where Marcus Haldon sat, dressed in a black suit that screamed power. This was not just a dinner. It was a battlefield, and every guest knew it. The richest women of New Avalon had arrived. They came in shimmering gowns, their hair heavy with diamonds, their smiles sharp like blades. Each one carried the name of a family that could bend governments and break markets. Tonight, they were not here for love. They were here for power and for the chance to become the new wife of Marcus Haldon, chosen by his only son. Whispers filled the room like buzzing insects. Which one will he pick? The Haldon fortune could double if he chooses the right alliance. They say Adrian has no interest in this game, but his father will force him. At the far end of the hall, Adrian Haldon entered quietly. He wore a simple suit, nothing flashy, but somehow every head turned toward him. Some women smiled sweetly, others studied him like hunters watching prey. Marcus raised his glass and announced in a booming voice, "Tonight, we welcome the finest of New Avalon. By the end of this night, my son will make the choice that secures the future of the Haldon family. Let the evening begin." Applause shook the hall. Adrian moved through the crowd slowly, offering polite nods, but his mind was elsewhere. Women introduced themselves one after another, names he already knew, families his father had drilled into his mind. "Adrian," one woman said, flashing a perfect smile, "my family owns the orbital shipyards. With me by your father's side, the Haldon Empire will control the stars." Another leaned closer, her perfume strong enough to burn his nose. "My family commands the energy grids. Together, our power would be endless." They laughed, they boasted, they sparkled like jewels under the lights. But Adrian's eyes kept wandering. He was not searching for diamonds. He was searching for something else. And then, he saw her. At the edge of the room, far from the glittering gowns and the polished voices, a young woman carried a tray of glasses. She moved quietly, her black uniform marking her as nothing more than a servant. Her steps were steady, her eyes lowered, but something about her presence cut through the noise of the hall. Adrian froze for a moment. It was her. The woman he had seen once before. The face that carried scars. The one his father would never approve. Without hesitation, Adrian walked away from the cluster of wealthy families and headed straight for the servant. The whispers exploded instantly. Where is he going? Why is he ignoring them? Is he mad? Marcus watched from his seat, his smile slowly fading into a tight line. The woman did not notice Adrian until he stood directly in front of her. She looked up, startled, her gray eyes meeting his. "You," Adrian said softly. She blinked, unsure. "Do I know you?" "Not yet," he replied. "But I know enough." She frowned, confused, but before she could speak, a voice thundered across the room. "Adrian!" Marcus Halden had risen from his chair, his face red with fury. The entire hall went silent. All eyes turned to the young man standing beside a waitress. "Return to your place," Marcus commanded. His voice was sharp, heavy with warning. But Adrian did not move. His jaw tightened, his heart steady. "This is my choice," he said clearly, his words echoing across the hall. Gasps spread like fire. The richest women in the room froze in shock, their painted smiles cracking. The board members of the Halden Empire whispered furiously among themselves. A waitress? A woman with no fortune, no power, no family name? Marcus's fists clenched at his side. For the first time in years, the king of New Avalon looked as if someone had struck him. The young woman shook her head quickly, whispering to Adrian, "You don't know what you're doing. I don't belong here." Adrian leaned closer, his voice calm but unshakable. "Maybe that's why you belong more than anyone else." Her breath caught. She wanted to step back, but her feet refused to move. The crowd erupted in chaos. Some laughed, others shouted. The banquet of wealth had turned into a storm of disbelief. And at the center of it all stood Adrian Halden, choosing not diamonds, not power, not influence, but a woman the world called nothing. Marcus's eyes narrowed. His voice dropped into a growl, heavy with danger. "Adrian," he said, "you dare insult this house with such a choice? You know what this means." Adrian looked straight into his father's eyes. "Yes, father. I know exactly what it means." The hall grew silent again, every guest holding their breath. Marcus's empire was built on control. But for the first time, his son had taken control away from him. And Marcus Halden was not a man who forgave betrayal. The banquet ended in chaos. Guests whispered, laughed, and stormed out. The richest women, who had arrived with pride, left with insult burning in their eyes. For them, Adrian's choice was madness. For Marcus Halden, it was betrayal. But Adrian did not care. He walked beside the waitress through the service corridors of the Halden Tower, far from the glittering lights. She carried her tray tightly, still unsure if this was real. "My name is Illyra," she finally said, breaking the silence. Adrian nodded. "Illyra," he repeated, as if memorizing it. "Why do you work here?" She hesitated. "Work is work. People like me don't have choices. I serve, I survive, and I stay invisible." But Adrian knew she was lying. He had seen the way her eyes shifted, the way her scars seemed older than her age. "You're hiding something," he said. Illyra stopped walking. Her gray eyes hardened. "And what if I am?" Adrian's voice was calm. "Then it means my father doesn't want me near you. Which is the exact reason I should stay." Meanwhile, in his private office, Marcus Halden smashed a crystal glass against the wall. Shards scattered across the floor, but his anger only grew. "A waitress," he roared. "He humiliated me in front of the board, in front of the city." "Who is she?" An aide rushed forward, trembling. "Sir, we are searching her records." But something strange came up. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Speak. She doesn't exist in the system. Marcus froze. In a city like New Avalon, every person was tracked: birth records, work histories, digital IDs. But this woman had no past. She was a shadow. Find out everything, Marcus growled. And do it fast. Back in the quiet corridors, Adrian sat with Illyra in an unused lounge. The sounds of the banquet had faded, but the tension between them remained sharp. You don't know what you've done, Illyra whispered. Choosing me has made you an enemy to your father. To his empire. I've always been his enemy, Adrian replied. He just never wanted to see it. She looked at him carefully, as if weighing whether to speak. Finally, she said, your father once owned me. Adrian stiffened. What do you mean? Her hands trembled as she touched the scar on her wrist, thin but deep. I was part of one of his secret projects. He called it the Ascension Program. He promised to build a new generation of humans stronger, smarter, loyal only to him. I was one of the test subjects. Adrian's blood ran cold. He had heard whispers of such things, but his father always dismissed them as lies. They experimented on you, he asked. Illyra nodded slowly. We were taken from the streets. Children no one cared about. They changed our bodies, our minds. Some survived. Many didn't. I escaped, but I've been hiding ever since. Her voice broke. If Marcus Halden sees me again, he will kill me. Because I am proof of what he has done. Adrian sat back, shock and rage swirling inside him. His father's empire was built on shadows, but now the shadows had a face. Illyra, he said firmly, you don't need to hide anymore. Not while I'm here. At that very moment, Marcus's aide entered his office again, pale with fear. Sir, we found her file. She was part of Project Ascension. She was supposed to be dead. Marcus's face turned white, then twisted with fury. Alive. In my house? With my son. His fist slammed against the desk. No. This ends tonight. Prepare security. Bring her to me. Quietly. The aide hesitated. And Adrian, sir. Marcus's voice was like ice. If he stands in the way, break him. Hours later, as the city lights dimmed toward midnight, Adrian and Illyra sat in silence. She stared at the floor, fighting tears she refused to show. He studied her scars, each one a story of survival his father would never admit. Why me? She finally asked. Out of all those women, why would you choose someone broken? Adrian leaned closer. His voice was soft but steady. Because the others had everything but none of them had courage. You survived my father. That makes you stronger than all of them combined. Her breath caught, and for the first time that night, a faint smile touched her lips. But before she could reply, the door slid open. Security guards in black armor stormed inside, weapons drawn. Illyra, one barked. By order of Marcus Halden, you are coming with us. Adrian stepped in front of her instantly. His eyes burned as he glared at the men. She's not going anywhere. The guards exchanged nervous looks. Few dared to defy Adrian Halden, but Marcus's orders were absolute. Illyra is property of the Halden Corporation, the lead guard declared. Move, sir. Or we will move you. Adrian clenched his fists, his heart pounding. For years, he had lived under his father's shadow, obeying his rules. But tonight, Standing in front of Illyra, Adrian felt something new. Not fear, but defiance. The guards stood in the doorway, weapons raised. Their black armor gleamed under the cold lights of the lounge. Adrian planted himself firmly in front of Illyra, his shoulders squared, his fists clenched. "She's not leaving," Adrian said, his voice low but steady. The lead guard hesitated. No one ever spoke against Marcus Halden. Not board members, not partners, not even politicians. But this was different. This was the CEO's own son. "Sir," the guard said carefully, "our orders come directly from Marcus Halden." "Step aside." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Tell my father," he said, "that his orders stop here." The guards shifted nervously. Some of them had worked in the Halden Tower for years, and they had seen the cruelty Marcus could unleash. But they had never seen Adrian like this, defiant, unshaken, his eyes burning with fire. One guard finally raised his weapon. "Then forgive me, sir." The room exploded into chaos. Adrian lunged forward, faster than the guards expected. He wasn't trained like a soldier, but rage gave him strength. He grabbed the weapon and shoved the guard backward, slamming him into the wall. Another guard swung at him, but Adrian ducked and struck hard, sending the man sprawling. Illyra moved too swift, precise. Her scars were not just marks of survival, but reminders of what she had become. Her body carried the strength of the Ascension experiments. With a single motion, she twisted a guard's arm until his weapon clattered to the floor. Her gray eyes flashed with a mix of fear and fury. "Go," she shouted at Adrian. "We can't fight them all." But Adrian refused to run. He stood his ground, protecting her with every strike. When the last guard fell groaning to the floor, the room went silent except for heavy breathing. Adrian wiped blood from his lip and looked at Illyra. "You're not alone anymore," he said. High above, in his private office, Marcus Halden watched everything through surveillance screens. His face was stone, but his hands trembled with rage. "My own son," he whispered. "He dares stand against me for her." An aide tried to calm him. "Sir, we can still contain this. The board doesn't know yet. If we capture her quietly." Marcus slammed his fist on the desk, silencing him. "No," he growled. "This is no longer about her. This is about him. Adrian wants to challenge me? Then let the world see what happens to traitors even if they carry my name." He turned to the cameras again, his eyes cold. "Bring them to the Grand Hall," he ordered. "I will face my son myself." Minutes later, Adrian and Illyra were dragged back into the grand ballroom. The guards had regrouped, stronger and more disciplined. This time, there was no easy fight. Their weapons forced Adrian and Illyra to move where Marcus wanted. The hall was no longer filled with laughter and music. Instead, board members and powerful allies of the Halden Empire had gathered, watching in silence. Word had spread quickly something was breaking inside the Halden dynasty, and they wanted to witness it. Marcus stood at the center, tall and unshaken, dressed like a king awaiting his disobedient heir. "Adrian," he said, his voice echoing across the hall, "you shame this house. You choose a gutter rat over wealth, over power, over your blood." Adrian's voice cut through the silence. "I chose what you could never understand, truth." Murmurs rippled through the audience. No one had ever spoken to Marcus like this. Marcus sneered. "Truth? Do you think these people care about truth? They care about control. They care about fear. And that," he pointed at Illyra, is fear. If she speaks, everything I built could burn. She is nothing but a threat. And you defend her. Adrian stepped forward, unafraid. Yes. Because if you built your empire on lies and blood, then maybe it should burn. The room froze. Marcus's eyes darkened, his rage barely contained. You would betray your own father? Marcus asked, his voice sharp as glass. Adrian didn't flinch. No, father. You betrayed yourself long ago. I'm only refusing to follow. Illyra spoke then, her voice trembling but strong. Marcus Halden, you can kill me, but you cannot erase what you did. I am proof. And one day, proof becomes fire. Marcus's gaze snapped to her. For the first time, something like fear flickered in his eyes. He masked it quickly, turning back to his son. You leave me no choice, Marcus said. From this moment, you are no son of mine. You are an enemy of the Halden Empire. Gasps echoed through the room. Board members exchanged glances. This was no private argument anymore. It was war inside the family. Adrian lifted his chin. Then I will fight you as your enemy. And I will win. The guards raised their weapons again. Illyra braced herself, her scars tingling as if warning her of the danger ahead. Adrian stood tall, his heart pounding but his resolve unshaken. Father and son faced each other, the king of New Avalon and the heir who had just declared rebellion. And everyone watching knew, this was not about wealth anymore. It was about who would control the future. The ballroom had turned into a cage. Guards surrounded Adrian and Illyra, their weapons humming with deadly energy. The board of directors sat like vultures, waiting to see how Marcus Halden would crush his own son. Marcus stood tall in the center, his voice calm but heavy with power. Take them alive, he ordered. The guards moved closer, their steps echoing across the marble floor. Adrian tightened his fists, ready to fight, but Illyra's hand brushed his arm. Her gray eyes locked on his. There's something you don't know, she whispered. Adrian frowned. What? She took a deep breath. The Ascension program, it gave me more than scars. It gave me this. Before Adrian could ask, she lifted her palm. For a second, nothing happened. Then light rippled from her skin, a pulse of raw energy that made the guards stumble back in shock. Gasps filled the room. The board members leaned forward, whispering in disbelief. Marcus's face hardened. He had seen this power before, but never from someone who had escaped his control. Illyra, he said, his voice like thunder. You dare use what I created against me? Her voice trembled, but she stood tall. You didn't create me. You tried to break me. And you failed. The guards recovered and lunged forward, but this time Illyra didn't run. The energy from her body spread like a wave, slamming into them and throwing them across the hall. Weapons clattered on the floor, sparks flashing. The crowd erupted in panic. Some fled, others screamed. But Marcus did not move. His eyes stayed locked on his son. This is your great rebellion, Marcus shouted. Hiding behind a broken experiment? Do you think you can defeat me with scraps of power? Adrian stepped forward, his voice steady. No, father. I will defeat you with choice. The words cut sharper than any weapon. Adrian reached for Illyra's hand. The room fell silent as he pulled her beside him, turning to face the board and the gathered elite. My father built his empire on lies, on blood, on stolen lives. He told me to choose a stepmother from the rich, to keep his throne safe. But I will not choose for wealth. I will not choose for fear. I choose her because she is truth. And truth is stronger than all of you. The board gasped. Cameras hidden in the room, controlled by media allies, had already begun streaming the event. Across New Avalon, millions of screens flickered to life, showing the son of Marcus Halden declaring war on his father. Marcus finally lost control. His voice roared like fire. You dare humiliate me before the world? Adrian didn't flinch. No. You humiliated yourself when you built an empire on the broken. Tonight, the world sees you for what you are. The board erupted into chaos. Some shouted for Marcus, others whispered that Adrian's words could not be silenced now. Illyra's energy pulsed again, holding back the guards who tried to move. Marcus raised his hand, signaling for more reinforcements. But no one came. The guards hesitated, fear in their eyes. They had seen Adrian fight for truth, and they had seen Illyra's impossible power. For the first time, Marcus Halden's command no longer felt absolute. Illyra turned to Adrian. If we stay, he'll kill us both. But if we leave now, people will follow you. They've seen the truth. Adrian nodded slowly. He looked back at his father one last time. I was your heir, Adrian said quietly, but you chose greed over family. Now you have nothing left to command. Marcus's face twisted with rage. I will hunt you. Both of you. You cannot escape me. Adrian's voice was calm, final. You can try. But the world is no longer yours. With one last surge of energy, Illyra blasted open the massive glass doors of the hall. Wind roared in, carrying the noise of the city below. Adrian and Illyra stepped onto the balcony, the night sky stretching above them. Below, the streets were already alive with voices. The broadcast had reached them. People saw Marcus Halden's empire for what it was. And now they saw Adrian standing against it. Illyra's hand gripped his tightly. For the first time, Adrian felt the weight of freedom terrifying, yet unstoppable. Together, they leapt into the unknown, leaving behind the glittering prison of Marcus's tower. Inside, Marcus Halden stood alone. The board whispered among themselves, already questioning his power. His son had walked away, and with him, the people's loyalty. For the first time, the king of New Avalon looked small. Final hook/ending line. Adrian's shocking choice had shattered an empire. The richest man alive still held his throne, but the world now had a new name on their lips: Adrian Halden, the son who defied a king. And beside him, the woman who carried scars, and the future.